At the Mother's Day brunch, I realized there wasn't a seat for me at the table. At first, I assumed the restaurant had made a mistake. The brunch was being held at the Westbrook Hotel outside Milwaukee, the same place Vanessa liked using for family birthdays because she said the valet parking made everything feel organized. The private room overlooked the lake, and every table had pink flowers and little gold signs that said Happy Mother's Day. My son Daniel waved when I walked in, but it was distracted. The kind of wave people give when they're already in the middle of a conversation. I was still carrying the blueberry coffee cake I'd baked that morning. I'd been up since 6 because I wanted it warm before driving over. Everyone else was already seated. Daniel. Vanessa. My grandsons Tyler and Ben. Patricia. A few cousins from Madison. 12 people total. 12 chairs. I counted twice. Vanessa noticed me standing there and gave me a quick smile. "Oh no," she said, looking around the table. I thought they added another place setting. Nobody moved. Not immediately, anyway. Daniel looked uncomfortable more than anything else. He half started to stand up, then sat back down when Vanessa touched his arm lightly and said, "It's okay, honey. We'll figure it out." Honey. That told me they'd already talked about this before I arrived. A waiter came over looking confused. "Would you like me to bring another chair, ma'am?" Before I answered, Vanessa smiled politely at him. "If it's not too much trouble," she said. "We had a last-minute adjustment this morning." Adjustment. Such a harmless word. I stood there holding my cake while another family across the room sang Happy Mother's Day to someone's grandmother. For a second, I suddenly felt very aware of my age. 68 years old. Widowed. Standing beside my own family table like an extra guest nobody planned for properly. Daniel finally looked up at me. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said quietly. The reservation got a little mixed up. I nodded like I believed him. Maybe part of him believed it too. "I'm glad you're here with me today. And if you've ever felt out of place around people you once sacrificed everything for, stay with me until the end of this story." The waiter returned carrying a folding chair from another room. He placed it near the end of the table beside a service station where staff stacked extra plates. Not really at the table. Close to it. Vanessa gave another small smile and lifted her mimosa. "Well," she said lightly, "the real surprise comes later anyway." Nobody laughed. And sitting there with my purse at my feet and my homemade cake still unopened beside me, I began realizing this brunch might not be about Mother's Day at all. I sat down in the folding chair without saying anything. The chair was slightly lower than the others, and every time a waiter passed behind me carrying dishes, I had to pull my elbows in closer so they could get through. From where I sat, I could see most of the family, but I was no longer really part of the table conversation. That feeling stayed with me the entire brunch. Vanessa kept things moving like a good hostess. She asked Tyler about baseball practice. She reminded Ben not to drink too much soda before dinner later at her mother's house. Every few minutes she smiled over at me like she wanted credit for making it work. Daniel mostly stayed quiet. Not cold. Just uncomfortable. He kept checking his phone and rubbing his thumb along the edge of his wedding ring, something he's done ever since he was young and nervous about something. When he finally looked over at me again, he gave me a weak little smile that somehow made everything feel worse. Because it wasn't cruelty. It was avoidance. The waiter eventually brought over plates of eggs, bacon, pancakes, and fruit. Mine came last after Vanessa quietly explained to him that there was a small seating mix-up. A mix-up. That's how family humiliations happen sometimes. Nobody says the ugly part out loud. They wrap it in polite language until you almost feel unreasonable for being hurt. I cut into my pancakes slowly while listening to everyone else talk. Patricia mentioned rising property taxes near Phoenix. One cousin complained about grocery prices at Costco. Tyler talked about needing a new glove before summer league started. Normal family conversation. But underneath it, something felt off. Every so often, Vanessa and Daniel exchanged quick looks across the table. The kind couples share when they've already discussed something privately beforehand. Then I noticed the folder beside Vanessa's purse. Plain manila. My name written across the front in black marker. Linda Harper. I felt my stomach tighten a little. Vanessa noticed me looking at it and immediately rested her hand on top of the folder. "Oh, that's just some information, Daniel, and I wanted to go over with you later," she said casually. "Nothing bad." Daniel nodded too quickly. "Yeah, Mom. Just practical stuff." Practical. Another harmless word. After 65, people start using words like that when they want control over decisions that used to belong to you. I took a sip of coffee and looked around the table again. Nobody seemed surprised the folder existed. Not Patricia. Not the boys. Not even Daniel. And that's when I realized the missing chair probably hadn't been an accident after all. It was part of a conversation everyone else had already been having without me. About halfway through brunch, Vanessa finally brought up the folder. Not directly. That wasn't really her style. She waited until everyone had finished eating and the waiters started clearing plates. Then she leaned back in her chair and smiled across the table at me like she was trying to include me in the conversation again. "You know," she said, "Daniel and I were talking recently about how much work a house becomes after retirement." Daniel shifted slightly beside her but didn't say anything. I looked down at my coffee. My house. The same 3-bedroom colonial Richard and I bought in 1987 after saving for nearly 10 years. The same house where Daniel grew up playing basketball in the driveway and tracking snow through the kitchen every winter. "It keeps me busy," I said simply. Vanessa laughed softly. "Sure, but busy and manageable aren't always the same thing." There it was. Still polite. Still wrapped in concern. But heading somewhere very specific. Patricia stopped cutting her pancakes. Ben suddenly became very interested in his phone. Even Tyler looked uncomfortable. Daniel cleared his throat. "Mom, we're not saying you can't handle things." Not saying it. Just implying it. Vanessa opened the folder slowly and slid out a few brochures. Retirement communities. One near Lake Geneva. Another outside Madison. Big smiling photos of seniors playing cards and gardening together. "We just thought it might be smart to look at options before winter comes again," Vanessa said. "Last year you slipped shoveling snow, remember?" I did remember. I'd bruised my hip carrying salt out to the driveway after an ice storm. Daniel came by 2 days later to help clear the sidewalk because he'd been busy with work. Still, hearing that moment turned into evidence against me stung more than I expected. "I'm doing fine at home," I replied calmly. Vanessa gave a small nod like she was speaking to someone being difficult at a doctor's office. "Of course," she said quickly. "Nobody's forcing anything. We're just trying to think ahead." Think ahead. That phrase landed differently once you're older. Sometimes it means planning. Sometimes it means people quietly deciding your future before asking what you want. Daniel finally spoke again, quieter this time. "The property taxes keep going up too, Mom." That caught my attention immediately. Not safety. Not loneliness. Money. I looked at him carefully. When Daniel lost his job during the recession, Richard and I paid their mortgage for almost 4 months without ever mentioning it to the rest of the family. Now my son sat across from me discussing my house like it was a financial situation that needed managing. Then Vanessa pulled one more paper from the folder. A property valuation estimate. And for the first time that morning, I realized this conversation had probably started long before Mother's Day. Vanessa slid the property valuation paper across the table like it was something completely normal for Mother's Day brunch. "This is just an estimate," she said quickly. "We were curious what homes in your area are selling for now." Curious. I looked down at the number printed near the bottom of the page. $780,000. More than double what Richard and I originally paid for the house. Daniel rubbed his forehead tiredly. The market's been crazy lately, Mom. I noticed he still wasn't looking directly at me very much. Not because he hated me. Because deep down, I think he already knew this conversation felt wrong. I set the paper back on the table carefully. When exactly did you two start discussing selling my house? I asked. Vanessa answered before Daniel could. Oh, nobody's trying to rush anything, she said with a quick laugh. We've just been thinking practically about the future. There was that word again. Practical. It's amazing how often older people hear that word right before someone tries taking control of part of their life. Patricia finally spoke for the first time in several minutes. Linda still drives herself everywhere, she said carefully. She's active at church 3 days a week. Vanessa smiled politely. Of course she is. And we want to keep it that way as long as possible. As long as possible. Like there was already an expiration date being quietly discussed behind my back. I folded my napkin slowly onto my lap and looked around the table. Tyler stared down at his phone. Ben looked embarrassed. Daniel looked stressed. And Vanessa looked prepared. That difference mattered. Because suddenly I realized this brunch wasn't spontaneous at all. They had probably rehearsed parts of this conversation ahead of time. Maybe not every word, but enough to know where they wanted it to go. Daniel finally leaned forward. We're just worried about you handling everything alone, he said. The lawn, the snow, repairs, all that stuff gets expensive. That part, at least, was true. Last winter the furnace needed repairs that cost nearly $4,000. Property taxes had gone up again too. And after Richard died, even small things like changing smoke detector batteries sometimes felt heavier than they used to. But none of that meant I was ready to leave my home. What hurt was realizing my family seemed to view those struggles as signs I should step aside. I thought about all the years Richard and I helped them without keeping score. Watching the boys after school every weekday while Vanessa studied for her real estate exam. Helping cover daycare costs when Tyler was little. Buying groceries during Daniel's layoff because they were behind on bills. Back then, nobody called me impractical. Then Vanessa reached into the folder one more time. I know this is emotional, she said softly, but sometimes the kindest decisions are the hardest ones. And hearing her say kindest while discussing removing me from my own home made something inside me go completely still. Nobody pushed the papers toward me after that. Instead, brunch shifted into that uncomfortable family silence where everybody pretends things are normal because nobody wants to admit the conversation has gone too far. The waiters cleared plates. Coffee was refilled. Somebody at another table started singing, "Happy Birthday," loudly enough for our whole room to hear. And my family acted like discussing retirement homes over Mother's Day brunch was perfectly reasonable. Vanessa dabbed her mouth with a napkin and smiled at me again. We're only bringing this up now because we care, she said. It's better to make decisions early instead of during a crisis. Daniel nodded immediately. Yeah. We just don't want you handling everything alone if something happens. If something happens. That phrase sat heavily with me. Because once you're older, people stop talking to you like your future is open-ended. Every conversation quietly starts revolving around decline. I took a slow sip of coffee. I haven't said I want to leave my house, I replied. Vanessa's expression stayed pleasant, but I noticed a tiny flash of irritation before she smiled again. Nobody's saying you have to decide today, she said. We just thought it would be responsible to look at options. Responsible. Another carefully chosen word. Daniel finally looked directly at me for more than 2 seconds. The upkeep really is getting expensive, Mom, he said softly. The roof, the taxes, utilities, it's a lot. This time I heard something different in his voice. Not greed. Stress. Daniel's company had gone through layoffs the year before. Vanessa's real estate business wasn't doing as well as it had during the housing boom either. I suddenly wondered how much of this conversation was really About concern for me versus concern about money. That thought hurt more than I expected. Because Richard and I spent years helping them financially whenever they struggled. We paid for braces for both boys. Covered part of Tyler's community college tuition. Watched the kids every summer so they wouldn't need expensive daycare. I even started clipping coupons again after Richard retired because we were helping Daniel with groceries during inflation spikes. Families do those things for each other. At least they used to. Patricia quietly leaned closer toward me while Vanessa was speaking to one of the waiters. Linda, she whispered carefully, have you looked at your legal paperwork recently? I frowned slightly. What paperwork? Patricia hesitated before answering. The house. Richard's trust. Anything connected to the estate. My stomach tightened. Richard handled most of our legal and financial paperwork himself before he passed. After the funeral, Daniel helped me organize some documents, but I never paid close attention to all the estate paperwork afterward. Patricia glanced quickly toward Vanessa before lowering her voice further. I'm probably overthinking things, she said. But this whole conversation feels prepared. Prepared. That was exactly the word I'd been trying not to think about all morning. And suddenly, I started wondering how long these discussions had been happening before I was invited into them. Nobody mentioned the papers again for a few minutes after Patricia whispered that to me. Vanessa switched the conversation over to safer topics almost immediately. Tyler's summer baseball schedule. Rising gas prices. A neighbor in their subdivision who was apparently fighting with the HOA over fence repairs. Normal suburban conversation. But underneath it, I could still feel the tension sitting at the table. Daniel barely touched his food anymore. Every few minutes he reached for his water glass even when it was still full. I'd seen that habit before when he was younger and nervous about money. That's when something started clicking into place for me. Not excuse. Just understanding. Vanessa wasn't trying to act cruel. She genuinely believed she was being practical, organized, forward-thinking. And Daniel looked like a man trying to keep peace between two parts of his life that no longer fit together. That hurt more than anger would have. Because weak people often convince themselves they're being reasonable while someone else crosses the line for them. Vanessa finally looked back toward me. I know this probably feels emotional, she said carefully, but honestly, a lot of families make these decisions much later than they should. Families. Decisions. Like we were discussing long-term insurance plans instead of my home. I kept my voice calm. I'm still living independently, I said. I drive myself. I handle my own bills. I'm not confused about where I want to live. No one said you were, Daniel answered quickly. Too quickly. The kind of response people give when they're afraid the conversation sounds worse than they intended. Then Vanessa pulled one more document halfway out of the folder before stopping herself. I only caught part of it. A realtor's logo across the top corner. She slid it back down immediately. But I saw enough. Patricia saw it too. Her expression changed slightly, and a few seconds later my phone buzzed quietly beside my plate. A text from Patricia. Linda, do not sign anything today. Please. I stared at the message for a second longer than I meant to. Then I slowly locked my phone and slipped it back into my purse. Across the table, Vanessa was explaining something about senior communities, having transportation services and social activities. Daniel nodded occasionally, but he still couldn't fully meet my eyes. And suddenly I realized something important. This conversation hadn't started because they thought I was helpless. It started because they thought I was alone. That's a very different thing. Then Vanessa said something that made the entire room go quiet again. We already spoke to someone about what the house could sell for, she admitted carefully. Just to understand the market. Spoke to someone. Not might someday. Already had. After Vanessa admitted they'd already spoken to a realtor, nobody at the table seemed to know what to say next. Even the boys looked Uncomfortable now. Ben stared out the window toward the lake while Tyler picked at the edge of his napkin. Patricia sat very still beside me, and Daniel looked like he wanted the entire brunch to end as quickly as possible. Vanessa tried smoothing things over almost immediately. "We were only gathering information," she said. "That's all." Gathering information. Another harmless phrase. But people don't usually contact realtors unless they've already started imagining life after the sale. I folded my hands together calmly. "I see," I said. That seemed to throw Vanessa off slightly. I think she expected either tears or anger. Something emotional she could gently talk around. Instead, I just listened. And the more I listened, the more certain I became that this conversation had been building for a long time. Daniel finally leaned forward. "Mom, nobody's trying to force you out," he said quietly. "We're just trying to think ahead before things become stressful later." There was genuine strain in his voice now. Not manipulation. Pressure. Bills. Mortgage rates. College tuition. Inflation. I suddenly realized Daniel probably spent months hearing Vanessa talk about solutions, until eventually he convinced himself this was responsible instead of hurtful. That didn't excuse it. But it explained some of it. I glanced at the folder again. "Am I supposed to sign something today?" I asked. Vanessa answered carefully this time. No. Of course not. We just wanted you to look over some options." Options. Then why bring legal paperwork to Mother's Day brunch? The waiter arrived with the dessert tray before anyone answered. Cheesecake. Chocolate cake. Strawberry shortcake. Vanessa thanked him with the same polished smile she'd worn all afternoon. I suddenly remembered all the birthday parties and school events I'd helped organize when the boys were little. Buying sheet cakes from Costco. Wrapping Christmas presents after midnight. Picking Tyler up from practice because Daniel was stuck at work. Families slowly become routines. Then one day you realize you're no longer included in the planning part of those routines. Patricia quietly touched my elbow. "Linda," she said softly, "before you make any decisions, maybe you should review everything with someone independent." Vanessa smiled immediately. "That's completely fair," she said. "We actually encourage that." Too fast. Too prepared. Daniel nodded beside her, but he still looked uneasy. Then I noticed something else sticking out slightly from the folder. A page with my address printed across the top. Underneath it, I caught 3 words before Vanessa slid the papers back together. Suggested listing range. My chest tightened a little. Because suddenly this no longer felt like a conversation about my future. It felt like a conversation about my house. And those are not always the same thing. The moment I saw the words, suggested listing range, something inside me settled. Not emotionally. Practically. Up until then, part of me still wanted to believe this was just clumsy concern. Poor timing. A family conversation handled badly. But people don't contact realtors, prepare paperwork, and discuss market timing unless they've already moved beyond just talking. Vanessa noticed me looking at the page and immediately slid the papers back into the folder. "That's only preliminary information," she said quickly. "Nothing official." Daniel nodded beside her. "We just wanted to understand what options might look like down the road." Down the road. The problem was, nobody had asked whether I wanted that road at all. I leaned back slightly in the folding chair and looked around the table again. The brunch room had started emptying out now. Waiters stacked coffee cups onto trays while families near the windows gathered purses and leftovers to take home. Somewhere in the hallway, I could hear a little kid crying because he didn't want to leave yet. Normal Mother's Day sounds. Meanwhile, my family was quietly discussing my future like I wasn't fully sitting there. Patricia spoke carefully. "Linda's still handling everything herself," she reminded them. "She volunteers at church, drives everywhere, keeps up the house." Vanessa smiled politely. "And that's wonderful," she said. We just don't want her waiting until there's an emergency. Emergency. Another word that sounds reasonable until you realize it's being used to slowly take authority away from someone. I finally looked directly at Daniel. Have you already talked to somebody about selling my house? I asked. Daniel hesitated too long before answering. Just generally, he admitted. Nothing serious. That pause told me more than the words did. I thought about the house suddenly in very specific details. Richard's coffee mug still sitting beside the garage workbench. The pencil marks tracking Daniel's height inside the laundry room closet. The freezer in the basement packed with soups and casseroles church friends brought after Richard's funeral. People think homes are financial assets once you reach a certain age. But older people know homes are really storage places for entire lives. Vanessa softened her voice again. Linda, nobody's trying to pressure you, she said. We're just trying to help you stay ahead of things financially. Financially. There it was again. I suddenly wondered how much Daniel had told her about my savings, Richard's retirement accounts, or the estate paperwork after the funeral. That thought made my stomach tighten more than the realtor page had. Then Patricia quietly reached for her purse and slid a business card onto the table beside me. Face down. Subtle enough that Vanessa wouldn't immediately notice. I flipped it over carefully. Harold Bennett. Estate attorney. And underneath the card, written in Patricia's handwriting, were 5 words. Call him before signing anything. I slipped Harold Bennett's business card into my purse without saying anything. Vanessa was busy thanking the waiter for packing leftover desserts into small containers, for the boys, and Daniel had stepped out into the hallway to take a work call. For a few minutes, the tension at the table loosened just enough for everyone to pretend brunch was ending normally. But nothing felt normal anymore. Patricia leaned closer once Daniel walked away. Richard trusted Harold completely, she said quietly. He handled most of the estate paperwork near the end. I frowned slightly. Why didn't Richard tell me that? Patricia hesitated before answering. I think he didn't want to worry you while he was sick. That sounded like Richard. Even during chemotherapy, he still insisted on mowing the lawn himself until the neighbors practically forced him to stop. He hated feeling like a burden to anyone. Suddenly, I wondered how many quiet conversations had happened during those last few months that I never fully understood at the time. Daniel returned a minute later looking tired. Sorry, he muttered. Work stuff. Vanessa gave him a quick look, then turned back toward me. Linda, whatever happens, we just want everybody protected financially, she said carefully. Long-term care gets expensive fast now. There it was again. Money. Costs. Assets. Protection. The conversation kept circling back to the same thing even when they tried dressing it up as concern. I nodded slowly but didn't answer. That seemed to make Vanessa uneasy. People expect older women to either agree politely or become emotional. Quiet observation makes them uncomfortable because they can't tell what you're thinking. Daniel finally sat back down beside her. We're not trying to gang up on you, Mom, he said softly. And for the first time all afternoon, he actually sounded sincere. Weak. Conflicted. But sincere. I suddenly realized Daniel probably spent months trying to convince himself this conversation was responsible instead of hurtful. That's what people do when they're afraid to disappoint their spouse but still know something feels wrong. The boys started gathering jackets while the staff cleared the room around us. Mother's Day brunch was ending. Families were heading home. And mine somehow felt farther away from me than strangers in the parking lot. As I stood up from the folding chair, my knees ached slightly from sitting awkwardly for so long. Daniel noticed immediately. See? Vanessa said gently, almost under her breath. That's exactly what I mean. Not cruel. Not loud. Just constant small reminders that they had already started viewing me differently. I picked up my purse and looked at Daniel. I'll review the paperwork later, I said calmly. Relief flashed across Vanessa's face too quickly before she hit it again. That reaction told me something important. They still believed this. Conversation was moving in the direction they wanted. And standing there beside the empty brunch table, I realized I needed to understand exactly what Richard had been trying to protect before I signed anything at all. After we left the restaurant, I didn't drive straight home. Instead, I sat in my car overlooking the lake for almost 20 minutes with the engine off and Patricia's business card resting on the passenger seat beside me. Families were still walking in and out of the hotel carrying flower bouquets and leftovers from brunch. A little girl in a pink sweater ran across the parking lot holding balloons while her grandfather followed behind laughing. Normal Mother's Day things. Meanwhile, I was sitting alone trying to understand how a family conversation about planning ahead had somehow turned into discussions about selling my house. My phone buzzed. Daniel. I let it ring once before answering. "Hey, Mom," he said carefully. "You okay driving home?" "Not, are you upset?" "Not, can we talk?" "Just careful small talk around the real issue." "I'm fine," I answered. There was a pause. Then he sighed softly. "Vanessa probably pushed too much today," he admitted. "She just worries about things." Worries about things. That was probably true. Vanessa struck me as the kind of person who made color-coded spreadsheets for vacations and checked mortgage rates before breakfast. Organized people sometimes convince themselves control equals care. Still, hearing my own son explain the situation instead of defending me hurt more than I expected. "Did you already meet with a realtor?" I asked quietly. Daniel hesitated. "Just once," he admitted. "Mostly to understand what the market looks like." The market. Not my life. Not my home. The market. I stared out through the windshield at the water. "Daniel," I asked slowly, "did you and Vanessa already decide I shouldn't stay there much longer?" His silence answered before he did. "We just thought maybe eventually," he started carefully. "It could become too much for you alone." Eventually. That word mattered. Because people often start making decisions for older family members years before those decisions are actually necessary. I closed my eyes briefly. The house still had Richard's winter coat hanging near the mudroom door. His gardening gloves were still in the garage cabinet beside the birdseed buckets. Some mornings I still made too much coffee by habit. I wasn't ready to leave that life behind because somebody else felt uncomfortable imagining me aging inside it. "I'm meeting with an attorney tomorrow," I said calmly. Daniel immediately went quiet. "What attorney?" "Harold Bennett." Another silence. Longer this time. Then Daniel spoke more carefully than before. "Mom, why would you need a lawyer?" That question told me everything I needed to know. Because if this had truly just been a loving family conversation, the idea of me speaking to an attorney wouldn't have made anyone nervous at all. Harold Bennett's office was in an older building near downtown Milwaukee above a small insurance agency and a dentist's office. Not fancy. Just quiet. The waiting room smelled faintly like coffee and old paper files. Framed photos of fishing trips and grandkids sat behind the receptionist's desk, which somehow made the place feel more trustworthy to me than the polished hotel brunch room earlier that day. Harold came out personally when I arrived. "Linda," he said warmly, shaking my hand. "I'm sorry it's under these circumstances." That sentence alone made my stomach tighten. He led me into his office and closed the door gently behind us. The shelves were packed with binders, tax folders, and estate law books that looked older than Daniel. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then Harold asked quietly, "Did they bring up selling the house today?" "Not if." "Did," I nodded slowly. Harold sighed and removed his glasses. "I was afraid that conversation might happen sooner rather than later," he admitted. Sooner. Meaning Richard had expected this possibility before he died. That realization hit me harder than I expected. Harold opened a file cabinet beside his desk and pulled out several folders labeled with Richard's name. Seeing Richard's handwriting again nearly unraveled me right there. Neat blue ink. Careful labels. Exactly the way he organized everything at home. Harold placed one folder carefully in front of me. Your husband updated several estate documents about 8 months before he passed, he explained. Mostly precautionary changes. Precautionary. Another quiet word carrying much heavier meaning underneath. I frowned slightly. Why didn't Richard tell me? Harold hesitated before answering. Because he didn't want you worrying during his treatment, he said gently. But he did express concerns about future pressure involving the property. Future pressure. Not Vanessa specifically. Not Daniel specifically. But enough concern to prepare legally. Harold slowly walked me through the paperwork page by page instead of dramatically dropping surprises all at once. Trust documents. Property protections. Medical directives. Very normal estate planning for couples our age. Until we reached one section. Harold tapped the page lightly. This clause matters, he said. I adjusted my reading glasses and looked closer. The house remained fully under my control unless I voluntarily chose otherwise. No transfer. No sale. No refinancing without my direct approval. Then Harold added something else carefully. Richard also included protections against coercion or financial pressure related to the estate. My eyes moved lower down the page. The wording was formal legal language, but the meaning was simple enough. Anyone attempting to pressure me into surrendering property rights could lose inheritance protections connected to the trust. I sat back slowly in the chair. Not shocked. Just suddenly understanding a lot more about Richard's behavior during his final year. He hadn't been paranoid. He'd been preparing. I drove home from Harold's office just before rush hour traffic started building. The whole way back, I kept thinking about one sentence Richard used to say whenever Daniel struggled with difficult decisions growing up. He avoids conflict until conflict finds him anyway. At the time, it sounded almost funny. Now it felt painfully accurate. When I pulled into my driveway, Daniel's SUV was already parked near the curb. I sat in my car for a second staring at it. Part of me wanted to keep driving. But another part of me was tired of feeling blindsided inside my own life. Daniel was standing in the kitchen when I walked in. Alone. No Vanessa. That surprised me immediately. He looked exhausted. Tie loosened. Sleeves rolled halfway up. The same stressed expression he used to wear during tax season when he worked those long accounting hours downtown. I figured you might come straight home, he said quietly. I set my purse on the counter. Did Vanessa send you? He shook his head. No. I came because this whole thing got out of hand. Out of hand. Interesting choice of words. Not wrong. Just smaller than what actually happened. For a minute neither of us spoke. The kitchen suddenly felt too quiet without Richard there reading the newspaper at the table like he used to every evening. Daniel finally rubbed his face tiredly. Mom, nobody was trying to hurt you today. I believe that. At least partly. That's what made the situation sadder than simple cruelty. Vanessa genuinely believed she was solving future problems. Daniel genuinely believed avoiding confrontation somehow made things easier for everyone. Meanwhile, I was the only person actually being discussed instead of consulted. I walked over to the coffee maker automatically, then stopped halfway because Richard was the one who always set it up for mornings after family gatherings. Little habits survive people longer than you expect. I met with Harold Bennett, I said calmly. Daniel froze almost immediately. Not dramatically. Just enough for me to notice. He explained the trust documents your father updated before he passed. Daniel looked down at the kitchen floor. I didn't know all the details, he admitted quietly. That, I actually believed too. Vanessa probably handled most of the planning conversations while Daniel convinced himself things would somehow work out gently if he stayed passive long enough. I leaned against the counter. Did you already plan on selling the house before talking to me today? Daniel hesitated. then nodded once. Not proudly. Not coldly. Just ashamed. We thought maybe downsizing would help everybody financially, he admitted. Everybody. There it was. Not just concern for me. The mortgage on their newer house. College costs for Ben. Rising expenses. Pressure. I looked at my son for a long moment and suddenly realized something painful. Daniel hadn't become heartless. He'd become weak enough to let other people slowly redraw moral lines for him. And sometimes that damages a family just as badly. About 2 weeks later, Daniel and Vanessa came over for dinner. Not a meeting. Not an intervention. Just dinner. At least that's what Daniel called it when he asked if they could stop by Sunday evening. I made pot roast because it used to be Richard's favorite. The house smelled like onions, carrots, and rosemary by the time they arrived. Rain tapped lightly against the kitchen windows while the Brewers game played quietly from the living room television. Normal things. That made the conversation harder somehow. Vanessa brought a salad from Costco and acted careful the entire evening. Softer than before. Less confident. Like someone realizing they may have badly misread a situation. Daniel barely ate. Halfway through dinner, I finally set my fork down. I met with Harold, I said calmly. Silence settled across the table immediately. Vanessa glanced toward Daniel before speaking carefully. We never meant for any of this to feel hostile, Linda. Hostile. Interesting word. Because nobody had yelled at me. Nobody insulted me directly. That's what made the whole thing so painful. Everything had been wrapped in concern, planning, responsibility, practicality. But underneath it was still pressure. I nodded slowly. I know you thought you were helping, I said. Daniel looked relieved hearing that. Too relieved. Like he'd been hoping forgiveness might arrive before accountability did. Then I continued. But Richard updated the trust before he passed. Harold reviewed everything with me. Vanessa became very still after that. I reached beside me and placed a small folder on the table. Not dramatically. Just calmly. The house stays under my control unless I choose otherwise, I explained. And Richard included protections against financial pressure involving the estate. Nobody touched the folder. Daniel stared down at his plate for several long seconds. Finally he spoke quietly. I honestly didn't know all the details. Again, I believed him. Vanessa probably focused on logistics, numbers, future planning. Daniel focused on avoiding conflict long enough to convince himself things would somehow feel less painful later. That's the danger of weak people. They let harmful situations grow because confronting them feels uncomfortable. Vanessa folded her hands together carefully. We were worried about expenses, she admitted softly. Your house, taxes, maintenance, and honestly, we've been struggling too. There it was. The first fully honest sentence anyone had spoken since Mother's Day brunch. Mortgage payments. College costs. Inflation. Fear. Real things. But fear doesn't automatically give people permission to start managing someone else's life. Daniel finally looked up at me. I'm sorry, Mom, he said quietly. I should have talked to you differently. Not perfectly. Not dramatically. But honestly. And sitting there at my own kitchen table, I realized something important. I didn't need revenge. I needed boundaries. After dinner, they left quietly. No shouting. No slammed doors. Just uncomfortable understanding. Later that night, I walked through the house turning off lights before bed. Richard's old coat still hung near the mudroom. The kitchen clock still ran 5 minutes fast like he always preferred. And for the first time since Mother's Day, I no longer felt like someone waiting to lose her place in the family. Or her place in her own home.